Well, it's still unclear what will happen to those migrants at the Lindela Repatriation Centre in Krugersdorp. Now, just to put you in the picture, the centre houses undocumented migrants pending their deportation. It was owned by Bosasa, which is now African Global Operations. It was auctioned for 60 million rand last week in an effort to repay the company's creditors and the Revenue Service. The Home Affairs and Public Works departments were unaware of the sale, and we are, I suppose, yet to get more details about it. But to discuss the situation, we are joined in studio by Sharon Ekambaram, who is the head of Refugee and Migrant Rights at Lawyers for Human Rights. It's so good to have you in studio. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is a desperate situation, one would imagine, for those that are housed there at Lindela. But I suppose let's talk about what is going to happen. Do you have any idea? Has anyone spoken to the people that are residing there as to what's going to happen to the centre?
I think that's the most pertinent question, and what we're concerned is the silence from the Department of Home Affairs with respect to the situation. Or how are people that are being detained, where are they going to be kept? How are we going to ensure that basic human rights, respect for human dignity is maintained? And as you say, waiting to be deported from the country.
Yeah, I mean, and one would think that the government would own this piece of land and would own the centre, as opposed to paying what reports are saying 1 million rand a month for this land.
It's been an ongoing crisis, the Lindela Detention Centre. There's been over 14 reports written by various institutions, whether it's the Human Rights Commission, judges like Edwin Cameron have visited, and all of them have reported on the conditions that the inmates or the detainees are experiencing at Lindela. And this has been, why is this being outsourced? This is a function of the Department of Home Affairs to ensure the standards and access to healthcare. And it's just been ignored. And it seems like it was part of the gravy train for corruption. And part of it was exploitation, and the conditions that people lived under was horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday there was obviously the minister talking to the fact that he was completely blown away by the fact that it was sold. He didn't even know that this had happened. In fact, he heard about it from his colleague Patricia DeLille. I wonder if he even knew that they were paying R1 million a month to lease this land from Bosasa. I mean, all of this coming as a surprise, as a shock, and yet what you're saying is there are reports out there. This has been ongoing for years.
I think it's part of what the phrase we use is that there's institutionalized xenophobia when it comes to dealing with foreign nationals in our country. And this is part of the problem, the way in which people that are detained simply because they don't have an identity document, they get kept in detention. The quality of healthcare services provided is shocking. And today we mark International Human Rights Day, and it's important to underscore that if you're caught without your documents, and that's a criminal offense, but according to our constitution and worldwide, we have to respect that you remain a human being, and you've got to respect the person's human rights, and you've got to treat them with dignity. And the other icon in our country was Nelson Mandela, who is world renowned for his fight for human rights and for justice. And it's a shame that today we are witnessing our country failing to provide services. As I said earlier on, we're finding the same with the asylum system, in the manner in which people seeking refuge are denied proper treatment and access in order to get documented in our country.
One of the things that South Africa, you talk about world-renowned, many people talk to the Constitution of South Africa and say, we have such an open constitution, we welcome, whether it be asylum seekers, refugees into South Africa. We don't put them in refugee camps, we allow them to integrate into society. And yet we have something like this Lindela Repatriation Centre, which people speak to, and I perhaps can get an idea from you what the situation is like there before it was actually sold off. I mean, some of the human rights of those that are residing in there, what is it like?
The starting point is that we have one of the best policies in the world, as you point out, with respect to our refugee rights, the Constitution. But we find that on a daily basis, there's complete disregard for the policy. And so there's overcrowding, and we are finding revelations at the Zondo Commission that this overcrowding was deliberate because money was being given on the basis of how many head count at Lindela. So the more people were detained, and it's atrocious the manner in which people were brought from police holding cells to Lindela in order just to get a couple more million from that.
How many people can Lindela actually hold? Do you know these?
4,000.
And how many people would you say?
And it often has been way over that, or it's been under that, less people, but they were still getting huge amounts of money as part of the gravy train and corruption that's unraveling at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there were some unconfirmed media reports, and I have to stress that they were unconfirmed, that some of the migrants were actually being kicked out of the facility ahead of the auction. Some basically saying others are saying it's business as usual. Do you have any more information you could perhaps give us?
No, not that I can anything confirmed, and I'm very wary of perpetuating unconfirmed reports.
Yeah, indeed.
But I think that is why it's more important that the Department of Home Affairs actually does make an announcement and reassure us of what that they have control, and that they are ensuring that irrespective of what is happening with Bosasa, that there is a plan to ensure that these places are run and managed.
Yeah.
And if you're going to arrest someone, you have the right. They have rights in terms of the conditions under which they're being detained.
Indeed, and also the fact that it has been auctioned off. Do we know who's bought it?
No.
We need to actually get somebody from government here in that chair to answer some of those questions, because I fear that I'm throwing questions at you that no one knows the answers to, and this is unacceptable. But the reality is that the future of those residing at Lindela now hang in the balance. Nobody knows what's going to happen next.
And what we are experiencing is there's routine arrest and detention of people who are undocumented, and they're being kept in police holding cells. They're being kept, and there's overcrowding in police holding cells. And so I think that, the one point, and we don't know under what conditions, and these are infringements of our policies, the infringements of protocols that we've signed on to, like OPCAT, which says that we have to maintain certain standards with respect to conditions of detention, the experiences that people have, whether it's in police holding cells, whether it's in prisons, whether it's in places like Lindela.
Let's leave it there for this morning. We thank you for coming in to talk to us. Sharon Ekambaram, who is the head of Refugee and Migrant Rights at Lawyers for Human Rights, talking to us about the sale of the Lindela Repatriation Centre and what it could possibly mean for the undocumented migrants being housed there. However, I think more questions have come out of this interview than answers, and we desperately need somebody from government to come in to give us those answers. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this.
Here's a minister who says, I'm working on some sort of plan.
There's no way that